Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are with episode 40, and I'm so glad to be here. And my promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that will energize your social media marketing, energize your business, and help you stay social. After all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. And I'm so stoked today to have Matt Harms with me. And I was first introduced to him through a friend, but I was very intrigued by his title of his company called Pen for Hire. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I just want to welcome you, Matt. Thank you for being on my show. I'm just so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Lorraine. It's a pleasure.
So a lot of people may not know you. So could you tell me a little bit about and tell them a little bit about your business and what you do?
Absolutely. So as a ghostwriter, I work with professionals, mostly coaches, consultants, public speakers, and nonprofits. And I help thought leaders, business owners take all of their knowledge, their content, their inspirational stories. I extract that from their heads and help them put it into compelling written content through the creation of books.
Awesome. And I think that's probably where the space that we first got to know each other, because I'm an author and I do a lot of things with authors. So that's how we got introduced. And, interestingly enough, and I'm just going to share this with you, is that there are a lot of people out there that are doing podcasts. And so I do a podcast, and a lot of people are probably saying, why am I with Biz Gone Social and doing social media? Why am I talking about podcasts? And one of the big reasons I'm talking about podcasts is because everybody's doing it. And some of my clients have been asking me, should they do a podcast? And so I wanted to bring in people who actually are producing podcasts, doing podcasts, so I could help my audience understand a little bit better about podcasts. And today I wanted to spotlight you and your business. And I want to ask you some questions about your podcast, which I forget the name of your podcast, but I think it's Pen Podcast, something like that.
Pen Podcast.
Yeah. So I thought that was what it was. So it was like, but how long have you been doing this podcast for?
We actually launched November 30th of 2020. So about just over 7 months. Actually, 7 months.
Why did you start your podcast?
So, Lorraine, I've wanted to do a podcast forever. I'm a big Family Guy fan, and there's for anyone who watches Family Guy, a segment where Peter Griffin gets his own TV show, What Really Grinds My Gears. And I always envisioned my podcast being me just ranting about, just anything and everything that comes to mind, like some of the topics we spoke about off audio before. And then I just never did it. In November, I was really getting my ghostwriting business up and running, and my business consultant asked me if I ever thought of doing a podcast. So naturally, I was like, sure. He asked why I didn't, and I had all these excuses. And that's when I learned to love the phrase that perfection is the enemy of progress. And we just launched. I had no idea what I was going to do. I got a microphone, a YouTube channel, and we just started, and I figured it out from there.
Yeah, and you do. And by the way, you do an awesome job at your podcast. And do you? Has it helped you in any way? Has it helped your business? Has it helped you grow?
It actually has. In fact, in the beginning, I thought it was kind of counterintuitive to start a podcast. If I'm looking to grow my writing business, why am I going to start a podcast for writers? Obviously, they already write. They don't need me. But it was just an interesting dichotomy of the people who tuned into the podcast were writers who maybe didn't need ghostwriting, but they loved that community, the support, listening to the struggles of other writers. And I've actually picked up viewers and listeners of my podcast who have become coaching clients of mine, who I help coach through their writing process. And other of my guests have referred me clients who have become ghostwriting clients.
That's awesome. That's always exciting news. I know I interviewed somebody yesterday who talked about, how she does a lot of producing. So she does podcasts for other people, and she does a podcast for them, and how their viewers have picked up. So it's always exciting to hear. I've gotten a few, but I'm kind of young at the game right now, but I'm still working at it. What do you think, when you started your podcast, what do you think the biggest challenge was once you decided I'm going to do this, you started getting everything together? What was your biggest challenge in starting?
Where am I going to find guests?
Yeah. Do you got any advice for that? Is like, now that you're well into it, I know I'm going to be doing a roundtable with you next week, but how do you do it?
So really kind of in your realm, I leveraged my social media accounts. I had probably 6,000 or 7,000 followers on Twitter, and most of them are writers, authors. So I just started inboxing people and saying, hey, I started a podcast. Would you like to be on it? And I set a goal of every day to invite 10 people, right? Because you never know, law of large numbers. If you invite 10, how many are going to say yes? Before I knew it, the responses I started getting so many yeses that I had to start blocking calendar times. I was recording 7 days a week. That was one of the mistakes I made that I'll tell everyone. Really don't underestimate how many people may want to come on your podcast, and don't give them carte blanche to your calendar. I was recording on Sunday nights at like 7 p.m. because I didn't think in advance to block my calendar out.
Yeah, wow. So, it's interesting, within solving the challenge that you had, you actually solved it and then got too many. Yeah, I always used to think that. I actually started out solo, like I mostly talk solo, but I realized that there's so much of a better dynamic when you're talking with somebody else. And plus the expertise that they bring in to your podcast is amazing. And plus you learn, and you're never, I think that's so much a better way of going, is having guests. I know that I felt like when I started out and I was just talking by myself, I felt like I was talking to myself. So it's so much better, I feel like, to interview. And I could see the idea of giving too much time to people for your, in your calendar. I think it's really important that you have to have boundaries. And to everyone out there that's actually thinking of starting a podcast, you got to take time off, all right? Because you have to rejuvenate and you have to relax and you have to, energize yourself again for the new weeks. Don't take my advice, take Matt's advice. Do not record late on Sunday night. Not a good idea. So the last question I have for you is, if you were starting your podcast from start, not knowing what you know now, for instance, what would you do differently? Is there anything you would do differently?
Well, yeah, definitely. Like we just spoke about the calendar now, I only record on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I make sure that any of my other work that has to get done for the week is already calendar blocked on, even if it's a Tuesday or Thursday, so that my calendar can't get hijacked. I still have the time to work on my clients' projects. I still have the time to work on anything in my life that needs doing. And if people have to wait 2 weeks, 2 months to get on the show for a time that works for them and me, then so be it. That's really given me a lot of time back. It's given me a lot of control. The other thing I was doing in the beginning that I stopped doing is I would promise people when the show was going to go live, because I wasn't recording live at the time, which a lot of podcasters don't. And then it would become, if life took over or you had too many recordings and you didn't meet that deadline, people would get frustrated. Like, where's my show? You told me it was going to be out. So really just tiny little evolutions. And now going forward, starting actually today, I am moving over to StreamYard, which is another service, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And for everyone who's not, you have the ability to stream to Facebook, YouTube live in the moment. So I'm going to pilot that today to eliminate that whole loading it, because behind the scenes, a podcast is a lot of work, right? You know this. It's not just get on camera, record, and you're done. You've got to upload. You've got to do the behind the scenes stuff, label the files. So just really constantly try to improve the efficiency of your show is the best advice I would give. And that's an ever-changing evolution for me.
Yeah. And the cool thing about StreamYard too, is you get the video recording and the audio recording. So it's so easy. I do my Facebook Lives from StreamYard because you can go to YouTube and you can go. I have 2 social media channels, and so it makes it really easy. So yeah, you're going to really love StreamYard. Right now, what are you using to host your podcast on?
So that's another funny part of what would I do differently. I stream it directly on my Penn podcast site, and I have the YouTube channel. But outside of that, it took off so quickly that I never had a chance to get it on like Anchor FM or Spotify. So I now have 166 episodes in my content bank. And I'm actually hiring a virtual assistant in the next week. I'm finishing interviews. And one of their only 2 responsibilities outside of handling my correspondence is going to be taking all of this content and getting it onto a major streaming platform, cleaning it up, and then also repurposing it for social media. I would love your opinion on this, but content is king. And on social media, you're sitting on a library of all that stuff and you're not using it. It's a waste.
Yeah. There's so much to talk about. I mean, that would be a whole nother topic. One thing that I did, I bought a course on how to do a podcast. And so they had suggestions. And basically what I did was they recommended these 2 things. One was, I think it was called Buzzsprout or Buzz something. And the other one one was called Spreaker. And so I just bought Spreaker, and it actually put it out to all the different, Apple and all the different things and all the social media platforms too. So I use that. I probably have a little bit too much software, but to be honest with you, I didn't have time to reach out to, like you said, basically, you didn't have time to reach out to Anchor FM. So, and different. So the whole thing is now that you're going to get that, I mean, you're just going to go off the charts because you do such a phenomenal job. Wow. I'm excited to know that you're going to be doing StreamYard and want to hear how how that works for you too. But when you're thinking about where you want to be heard, and you started off very small, YouTube and stuff, and YouTube has all these strange things. Did YouTube do anything to help you? I mean, did you have to do anything extra on YouTube to launch your podcast?
No, they were actually fairly user-friendly in getting it set up, getting the videos loaded. Just like anything else, you get out of it what you put into it. If I had more time, which we're moving into now, get your subscribers up, monetize, bring in the endorsements. There's all the different ways you can leverage their tools. But ultimately, they're just another means to an end. I have nothing bad to say about them. It was easy. It's probably why I opted for that as opposed to figuring out how to do all these other things. My podcasts are all, for the most part, currently live without being live. So I didn't edit anything. Whatever happens during that recording is exactly what the audience hears. And I kind of like it like that. Even though I have the ability to go back in and edit things out, I won't.
I used to do that. Like for instance, I coughed a little bit ago. I would probably edit that out. But the bottom line is I'm so busy in my business, I don't have time to edit out. And you know what? Life is not perfect. That's the big thing. Life is definitely not perfect. So your podcast isn't going to be perfect as long as people can hear it. And because that would be the biggest distraction, or you don't have, like the train whistle blowing through your whole podcast. I mean, I've been on podcasts where that's happened. And, so as long as you have a really good place to record and stuff like that, I think that's a good thing. And I'm glad to hear about the whole YouTube thing, because my podcast goes to YouTube too, but it's not a video. And who knows, maybe that may be something that I might do later on. This has been awesome, just learning about how you've done a podcast. I want to thank you for coming on. If somebody, I reach all kinds of people. I reach people who are business owners who may want to start a podcast. I reach business owners who want to write a book. I reach all kinds of people. And so if somebody would want to reach out to you and work with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way would be to email me, Matt, M-A-T-T, at penforhirenyc.com. or they can just head over to my website. There's a scheduling link to set up a free 30-minute call with me, and that's penforhirenyc.com.
Perfect. And I also will put that in the description so people can get it right away. Again, I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody who's listening today. And again, if you have any questions for me or Matt, feel free to just, send us an email. My email, by the way, is Lorraine@bizglensocial.com. And until next time, I will see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram @BizGoneSocial for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.